Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Hey there, just before we get into the podcast, a quick reminder, we could use your financial help. Please support us on Patreon so we can keep on keeping on. Check the Patreon links to donate. Hope you enjoy this episode. Hello again, this is Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. It's Dennis Rimmer, DR, the podcast guy, your host, with us today from somewhere in freezing Saskatchewan, even though we'll be on the air probably a bit later than this, but Tommy John Ehman. So Tommy, exactly where are you today?
Well, today I'm out in the farm here where I live. I'm rural Saskatchewan. I'm about 8 miles from Craik, which is my hometown. And yes, it's just as cold here as there.
Okay. Well, we'll let people in warmer climates just kind of imagine what it's like. But so yes, we talked earlier with your sister, Amy Jo.
Yeah.
So now we have Tommy John. So we've got a brother-sister combination. Earlier we had a mother-daughter combination. So why does creativity run so well in your family? Any reason for that?
I don't really know. I mean, I've been, like for myself, I've been singing and writing songs for a long time, and I know Amy Jo was, into writing and, journalism and that back in high school. And I don't know. It's not really in our family anywhere as far as I know. Like, my dad was a farmer, and my mom, she did go, was a university grad, and, she was, well educated and well written, but I don't know. I guess it's just the path we chose, I guess.
Tommy John Ehman is with us. He's a musician, songwriter, and we're going to talk about songwriting and things like that, of course. But tell us your story. Where you guys grew up in Craik, or near Craik, right?
Yeah, we grew up on a farm. We're just outside of Craik, about 8 miles. This is farmland that my great-grandfather came to farm. Now, I don't think he actually broke the land, but they bought the land in the early, maybe about 1918, somewhere in there, and built the house here. So my great-grandfather was here, my grandfather grew up here, my dad grew up here, and I grew up here, and now my kids are growing up here. So, I mean, it's been in the family a long time, and that's where Amy Jo and I both grew up out here with our family. Now
you have brothers and sisters other than Amy Jo, or?
Yep, I have a brother Jim. He's in the insurance industry in the Cayman Islands, and my sister works for SaskTel. She lives in Regina. Well, Maureen is her name.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And I'm looking right now at a T-shirt I have on my wall of fame. Tommy John Ehman, Turn On the Radio. So let's jump to that, and then we'll go back to the beginning. Tell us about Turn On the Radio.
Well, Turn On the Radio was my 5th album. I think it came out in, 2010, I think. So it's getting to be a few years old now. Just a collection of songs that I had written. In just maybe, in that year prior to the album coming out, we recorded it at a few different recording studios with a producer from, he actually had been in Vancouver and LA. His name was Brian Dobbs. Produced that album, and just a collection of songs that I had written that I thought would be, a nice album together with some songs that were, I thought were radio friendly, and just the stuff that I was writing at the time. I think it turned out very well.
Now, how would you describe your musical style?
Oh, people say that I'm country rock, country, alt country. It kind of depends on what I'm doing. That album was pretty much country rock, but the one I did after that, called Day Night, was very much roots, alt country, very stark, not stark necessarily, but low production songs, just vocal, guitar, and maybe some fiddle and mandolin. So they weren't big production songs. So that was much more rootsy, folky kind of stuff. So it just depends on my mood and where I am. But most people say, and I agree, that kind of alternative country, roots kind of music.
And now Amy Jo kind of took up pen and paper, so to speak. Did you take up the guitar, I assume, at an early age?
Yeah, when I was real little, from between, say, the ages of 8 and maybe 14, somewhere in there, 15, it was hockey, sports. So, and all those things that you do in rural Saskatchewan, baseball in the summer, hockey in the winter, and then, your school sports. But as I got a little older, we had a guitar around the house, and I started to pluck away on that a little bit and, learn to play a few chords. And my thought even then was I want to be able to accompany myself, because I wasn't really that into learning to play guitar like a Jimmy Page or Vince Gill, but I wanted to be able to sing songs like Gordon Lightfoot and Murray McLaughlin and Willie Nelson and these guys. And so I just wanted to be able to strum along. So I was just learning chords, and eventually I just got a little bit better at it. And my fingers didn't bleed after every time I played, and it just got to be just something that became really passionate for me.
Now, did you have any early musical inspirations? People, groups, singers that you kind of liked right from the get-go?
Yeah, I've been singing since as long as back as I can remember. I always was wanting to sing. And I'll tell you that probably the first song that I ever really learned was the Farmer Song by Murray McLaughlin.
I was going to mention that, yeah.
That was like one of the earliest songs that I knew all the words for, and eventually learned how to play it. But when I really started to get into wanting to, really pursue it as something that I, was passionate about, was when I started to listen to artists like Willie and Waylon, Merle Haggard, and some of those country artists that were big in the day in the late 70s and the early 80s in there, particularly like Willie and Waylon, and they were really influences on me and Merle that just, wow, these guys can write their songs, sing these songs, and it just was a real eye-opener to me, just something that I really wanted to pursue. So those were really my biggest, probably, influences to get started.
Now, do you have one favorite song above all others out there?
Oh my goodness, that's a tough one. I mean, when I think of just a simple song like "On the Road Again" by Willie Nelson, and another really simple song, "Lukenbach, Texas" by Waylon. Still some of my favorite songs, partially because I was young when I was hearing them for the first time, and they became such a big influence for me to want to be a musician, wanted to write songs and play guitar. But, as time goes on, other songs come along and other artists come along, they go, oh, I really like that, I really like that. So those are big influence songs. And as you move along, and I started to getting into Tom Petty and John Mellencamp and Bruce Springsteen music, the songs were much more intricate and lyrically more elaborate, then those would become my favorite songs. So it's a real wide range of areas where my influences come from.
I understand, because like one of my favorite all-time musicians next to you, and Valdi, we interviewed Valdi earlier on the show, is Valdi. Bruce Springsteen. So yeah.
Yeah. Did you know that I opened for Valdi last summer?
I was just going to ask about your performance career. When did your performing life begin?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, when I was real little, we had a family band with my brothers and sisters, and my mom would teach us these, cute little songs, and we'd sing at the local Willing Workers Christmas party or teas or something around town. So we got started when I was real little, but more so when I was like late teens, early 20s, when I had my first band together with Rob, who actually still plays in my band now. And, we started playing locally around town in the bars and the cabarets and things. So that was, quite a while ago. But yeah, those early days were a lot of fun.
Now, you mentioned opening for Valdi in the summer, so that's when we talked to him. So where did you perform with him?
Was that last summer? I think it was actually the summer before now they were
well, he's always on the road, so who knows?
Yeah, he is. We opened for him at the Dog Patch Music Festival at Loon Lake.
Okay.
And we opened the show for Valdi, and it was, so then we got to open for him, play, meet him after his show, had a great little chat with him and listened to his show, put on a fantastic show. Yeah, great entertainer. Love his stuff.
Yes, I've seen him perform and known him, well, sort of known him for years, and he's got a good guy to talk to. He's kind of like a friend of mine said, he's probably been asked the same questions 1,000 times, but he still manages to be engaging and has some interesting stories, and it's fun to talk to people like him and like you, and that's what I do is talk to people and get their stories, because I love hearing stories. So
and people like me love to tell our story and talk stories and songs, so it works together really well.
So we're jumping all over the place, but that's okay. Tommy John Ehman is with us, a musician, songwriter based in Craik, Saskatchewan, we'll say, just a few miles outside of Craik, or kilometers, as we say in the great frozen north. What was this? Do you remember the first song you ever actually wrote?
I do. I had some song scratches, but the one that actually was the first one that actually had a verses and chorus and came together, I do remember it. The title doesn't really. I can sing part of the song, but I'm not going to. But I can remember, like, it had to do with the moon. I remember sitting in the living room looking out the window, and the full moon was up through the window, and I wrote kind of this little song about it. And, looking back now, it was probably absolutely terrible, but, if you don't write terrible songs, you don't get the good songs. That's the start.
Well, it was always like Moon and June and Spoon and stuff like that, right? That's probably the song exactly. Yeah. But
all those rhymes.
Interesting, because this is actually a full moon weekend, so things could get crazy out there. But we'll go into that.
Exactly.
Now, you singer songwriter, but did you read much as a kid? I know Amy Jo did, so I'm wondering if Tommy John did.
I didn't read a lot, I didn't. Looking back, I would say I wish I had read more, but, I was just so into sports and all that kind of stuff that it just kind of took my attention for the most part. But what I do remember reading books in, when I started to get into music, I got into music artists' autobiographies. So, I remember reading a couple of Elvis books. I have a Willie Nelson autobiography. I have a Waylon. I have a Johnny Cash.
Right.
And a few others. And those are the ones that I really like reading the most.
The one I just read, a couple of years ago, I still have it, is the Keith Richards autobiography. Now, you'd think the guy doesn't know anything when looking at him, and that's just a stereotype, but his memory was fantastic. That book was just an easy read, and I don't know how he recalled all of that stuff from when he was in Boy Scouts as an 11-year-old boy and stuff like that, and just on and on.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Hey, that's a good one. I'm going to have to read that one. The latest one I read, although I didn't read it because I can't really read books anymore with my vision issues, but audio books, is I just did the Born to Run Bruce Springsteen book that came out. And if you read that one? That's a great book too.
Yes, I have that. Actually, it's on the shelf next to me over there, because I just did a quick review of it on one of our podcasts.
Yep.
So
that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's Tommy John Ehman and Amy Jo Ehman. Did your names ever get mixed up and you get called Tommy Jo and she get called Amy John, or?
No, I don't think so. What we get more than anything, well, I don't know about Amy Jo for sure, but I get a lot of people that don't actually know how to pronounce Ehman, and they'll go Eamon.
Right.
Which, we figured that probably in the early days of our name, when our families first came here, it probably was pronounced Eamon, or more like Achman or something like that. But we call it Eamon now. Right. But we get a few people getting that wrong. But
actually,
don't call me late for dinner.
That's right. Call me whatever you want. I actually had to check with Amy Jo just before our little chat to make sure I was pronouncing it correctly, because that's another one of my pet peeves, is why Canadians think you have to spell A-E-H. To me, that doesn't make sense. It should be apostrophe A-Y, but nobody listens to me. I'm not famous. So.
They don't listen to me either.
Yeah. So back to songwriting for a moment here with Tommy John Ehman on Talking Books and Stuff. I ask people these questions. It's like, how do you write a song? Is there any answer, any formula, any method, or how do you do it, I guess is the question. I guess,
there's really, there's a method to the madness, but there's really no method at the same time. There's certain, so to speak, there's certain rules, or rules isn't even the right word, but there's certain things that you want to put, that you can put into your song to make it a little more interesting. There's certain ways that you can come up with your song ideas. So there's many different ways to do it, but in the end, the formula is really to write a good song. It doesn't really matter how you get there, because there's so many different ways. You can write it by yourself, you can write it with somebody, you can write it in 2 minutes, and you can write it in a month or a year. It doesn't really matter as long as you write a good song, which, I follow some professional songwriters from Nashville and LA and things like this, and that's something I learned a number of years ago now, is it doesn't matter as long as you write a good song. That's the number one thing. It's got to be a good song, or you wasted your time, so to speak.
Right.
But so, there's a lot of different ways to do it, for sure.
Speaking of the country music songwriting, did you ever see that documentary Ken Burns did about country music?
I haven't yet. I've seen a lot of people talking about it on social media and whatnot, but I haven't, but I really have to. People say it's really, really good.
Oh, it is. It's obviously U.S. based, of course, but one of the stories I remember was the guys who wrote that great George Jones song, He Stopped Loving Her Today. Mm-hmm. And they had it on the shelf for like 2 years because they couldn't come up with a middle bridge. And then finally somebody threw in the idea about having the woman show up at the funeral. And then it took off, and George Jones, it's one of my all-time favorite songs. So,
yeah, mine too. That's a great song. And I've got some sort of things like that. I had songs where I just couldn't come up with. Here's an example. I wrote the song for the Wheels of Life album called Jack and the Letters Home, which is a story about a soldier whose younger brother wanted to go with him to the war but was too young to go. So he was writing letters home to him. And I was dogged to find a chorus for this song, because the story is in the verses and I just couldn't come up with the chorus. Uh-huh. And finally it just dawned on me that it didn't need a chorus. And we do some, if you've heard the song, there's some which sort of becomes the chorus of the song. And after that it was like, bang, it was like the light bulb went off and the song was done. So it can come in so many ways. Oh,
so you worried about this problem, let's say for years, and then all of a sudden you worried the problem wasn't a problem, and there you go, the problem was solved.
Right, exactly. I had this song, I loved it, but I just couldn't put it together. And finally, it just dawned on me one day, and bang, it was done. So, it was like euphoria. It was, wow, I did it, so to speak.
Tommy John Ehman with us today from rural Saskatchewan, country, I'll call him country rock, country singer, songwriter. There's a trend these days in radio country for what they call bro country. What's your thoughts on that? I'm not a bro country artist, and I'm not a big bro country fan. It's not that I don't like the songs. There's some good ones. There's some bad ones, I guess, in every genre. But, right.
Every generation, so to speak, or whatever, the music takes a turn in a certain direction. There's a lot of people that thought Waylon was too rock and rolly for country music back in the late 70s.
Right. Or and Buck Jones in the 60s. Buck Owens, not Buck Jones. Buck
right.
Owens, yeah.
Yeah, Buck Owens was the same thing. So, it changes, and some people like it and some people don't. And, just wait a minute, because something else is going to happen, and it's going to put the country music industry on its head, and somebody else is going to, if you remember when Garth Brooks came along, and all of a sudden, country music changed, and everybody was starting to sound like Garth Brooks, and it shoots in that direction. So right now, we're sort of in this bro country thing. It may not be my thing or your thing or that person's thing, but hey, it's still music, and it still makes you feel good and makes you smile, and yep. I guess that's what it's all about in the end anyway.
Well, I've always liked country music along with pretty much everything except opera. I can't understand opera. I don't understand the appeal, so that's all right. But
I'm probably I'm in the same boat with you there. Yeah, it's not my cup of tea either.
I always figured that country music, I'll call it top 40 radio country music, was about 15 years behind rock and roll in the way the songs were and the way the arrangements were and things like that. Is that a fair assessment, do you think, or am I out to lunch?
No, we discussed this exactly with my band and, just other people in the music industry and whatever. If you can look at the way the trends are in the music, even you look at it now, if you think of what the songs sounded like in the mid 80s, not the heavy metal hair stuff, but the rock songs, that's some of the stuff that comes in here now. And now you can hardly find a steel guitar in a new country song because that doesn't fit the mode right now, But give it some time and it'll be back.
Well, what is that song? If you're going to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band. So,
yeah, that one. Yeah, that's for sure, right there.
I always like George Strait, of course, and the things I like about country music is hard to explain. Is this everybody says the stories, but that's right, the stories that are told, and the way that the language is used, and there's little twists put on it. Like a song I like, it's either by John Conley or Earl Thomas Conley. I get those two guys mixed up, but it's instead of the saying goes, "Tell it like it is," it was "Tell it like it used to be," and then he goes in the big story. And then Sammy Kershaw, I think, about the yard sale, like they're putting yard sale prices on what used to belong to you and me, that kind of stuff. And that's like, it's emotional.
How about like She Got the Gold Mine, I Got the Shaft by Jerry Reed? You know, just little twists on the way you think of things. It just, you know, really cool. You know, like somebody wrote that song. Somebody sat down with a guitar or a piano, and they had that little trill of, you know, vocal line there, and the song comes out of it. It's amazing.
Another one that comes to mind, before we beat this topic to death, is "On the Other Hand," that Randy Travis song from the early '80s. On the one hand, but on the other hand, there's my wedding ring and stuff like that. So I worked at a country station in the mid '80s in Mount Vernon, Washington. So that's kind of the stuff I know, is that mid '80s kind of stuff. Tommy John. He's with us, Tommy John Ehman. One of your website mentions, I think I saw something about Rick Tippie in Vancouver. You still associated with Rick Tippie at all?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm well aware of his music, but I didn't open for him or anything like that, so I'm not sure what the connection is.
No, I don't know where I saw that, but I even wrote a note here about Rick Tippie. Because his dad, Elmer Tippie, was a disc jockey in Vancouver for years at the country station CKWX, and then he was a performer.
Well, I do know that, like when I was on the road back in the day, like, you know, playing bars and stuff like that, Rick Tippie was out doing the same thing too. So I mean, I can't remember. Like, we probably met a time or two, but it's been a long time.
What was the hardest music lesson you ever had to learn in the music business?
Oh, wow. You know, one thing that comes to mind, I don't think I've been asked that specific question before, but one thing that I think of is when I started playing songs to radio stations, and they'd give feedback to my radio tracker, and they'd say things about my song that, you know, why they didn't want to play it or whatever, and I'd like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And you just have to let it go. You can't dwell on it. You can't phone them up and say, hey, why didn't you play my song? It just is what it is. They get hundreds of songs, and that's the lesson you learn. Not everybody's going to like your song, and there's just nothing you can do about it. So you just keep plugging away and push your song to those that like your songs. So I guess that's sort of a lesson that you learn along the way.
Right. And Tommy John Ehman and the band. What's your current project? What are you guys doing these days?
Well, interesting you should ask. I'm just in the recording studio right now with my friend and producer Jesse Wyman at Nolita Studios in Saskatoon. We're working on a couple of new songs that I'm going to be putting out here. Well, one being in the next couple of months, and then another one in the summer. We're not exactly sure the dates or the order yet, but a couple of new songs there. I got some shows coming up here in the next little while with myself and my bass player, Rob Ehman. We do a duo show. We got some band shows coming up and getting some stuff for the summer already. So, I mean, it's you know, the calendar's filling up, and, you know, we got some new music coming, and, you know, there's always something going on. It's always exciting.
That's good. And you have the farm to care about as well, I suppose.
Yep. I'm the owner of the farm. My son does most of the hands-on farming now with another partner that he farms with. So I'm like I like to say I'm sort of the mentor, but, you know, I only get asked when they, you know, need a question once in a while. But no, yeah, we look after the farm and, you know, do all we can here. We're going to have lots of garden, and, you know, I love doing that too. So between looking after the farm, writing songs, and playing music, you know, stay pretty busy. Well,
what's the size of the spread? Just curious.
We have 2,200 acres ourselves. And then another farmer that my son Evan farms with has about, I think 4,500 acres. So between the two of them, they're farming 6,000 or 7,000 acres. So it's a pretty good spread between the two of them.
Pretty good. And then you got seeding season coming up, which will be nonstop for about 30 or 40 days, and then and then you hope.
Yeah, well, they're making plans now, and still marketing some grain from last year, and making the plans for this summer. It always gets pretty hectic. Yeah,
you put the seed in and then hope for rain at the right time.
Which we were doing last year. It got pretty dry before the rain finally came. We were lucky we did get some rain, but it turned out okay.
Do you ever watch Letterkenny, by the way?
I have, because my son likes Letterkenny, so I have seen the odd thing about it, but I'm not a huge Letterkenny fan by any stretch, but I do know of it, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm a huge Letterkenny fan, so.
Okay.
Okay. What is there one thing that people do not know about you that maybe would surprise them?
I guess the thing that most people know about me is singing and songwriting. What they wouldn't know, I guess a lot of people maybe don't know that I don't see very well anymore.
Oh,
that might be probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
If they see me out with my white cane, and they know, and the people that know me know I have vision loss and vision issues, but people listening right now, they go, "Oh, I didn't know that about him."
I didn't know that.
Because so there you go. I mean, it's not plastered all over my website or anything like that, but if you see me at a show and I'm walking with my white cane, then people know. And I mean, that's probably the biggest thing. Otherwise, I don't know. Some people might be surprised that I live on a farm in rural Saskatchewan and I'm not from Regina or Saskatoon, or who knows, but
or Alabama.
That would probably be
with a name like Tommy John. You should be from Kentucky or someplace. So.
well, that's more the formal. Like my friends and whatever, they just call me Tom. Old Tom. But but as far as the what the name that goes on the album or the singles, I put Tommy John Ehman, but. Yeah, just good old Tom, I guess.
Good old Tom.
But no, it's fun.
If there was a movie made of your life, who would you want to play you?
Brad Pitt. I don't know. Can he sing? I don't know.
I don't know.
Somebody that can. It would have to be somebody that can sing, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Bradley Cooper would be a good one. There you go.
Yeah. Yep, that would be a good one. Yeah.
Whoever
it is, as long as the movie does really well.
That's right.
That's the most important thing.
And then you could write the soundtrack for it, see? So
I could, yeah. Very good idea.
Tommy John Ehman has been with us today. We're sort of wrapping things up. But before we do, Tom, TJ, you have a website, you have an online presence. What is it?
Yeah, okay, TommyJohnEhman.net. Ehman is EHMAN.net. From there, you can reach all the Facebooks and the Twitter and the Instagram and all those things, we all use every single day of our lives. And so to keep you up to date on the information of where we're playing and the new music that's coming out. And, of course, there's links to Spotify and Apple Music and all those things where the songs are, and we just love people to come and listen and come to shows and come up and say hi and friend me on Facebook, like our pages. We just want to, the more people we can meet, the better. We just that's what we do this for, and to try to spread our music around. So start there, TommyJohnEhman.net, and from there's lots of places you can go.
Gotcha. That's great. Tommy John Ehman been with us today, singer-songwriter from Saskatchewan, and sister Amy Jo Ehman we had on earlier. So Tommy John, thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's just great to do these kinds of things with especially people from Saskatchewan. That's awesome to help get our word out and spread the word and spread the music. And we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.